morning, everyone, and welcome to the Beaver Monologues. Thanks. If you could please take this minute to turn off your cell phones, that would be appreciated. For the safety of our actresses, if you're sitting in the front row, if you could refrain from resting your feet on the front, that would be great. And we are going to exit using the aisles, so if you can keep those clear, that would also be great. So many great things. There will be no intermission during tonight's show. Some of the stories you are about to hear may be triggers for some audience members. Please know there are resources here for you. If you feel uncomfortable at any point, feel free to exit the theater at any time. A representative from Crime Victim Services is here to talk with you should you need it. There is a safe room at the end of the hall to the right. There are signs pointing the way. There are also on-campus resources I encourage you to use. Our campus counselors, Ray Staten and Tyson Goings, and the campus counselor, or campus pastor, Tig, are all confidential sources. My name is Rebecca Juliana, and I am the director and producer of this show. This is my social work and theater departmental honors project, dedicated to exploring the cathartic aspects of writing your own story and having that story shared. These stories connect us in common humanity, satisfying the research part of this project through the words of Brené Brown. Stories are data of the soul, after all. 16 stories were collected anonymously and cover a wide variety of topics, from shaving or not shaving, like hair, to sexual abuse, to motherhood. The performers in this piece are not the authors of these stories. These are the stories of your classmates, your girlfriends, your roommates, your sisters, your mothers, your friends. The stories are organized much in the style of Eve Ensler's Vagina Monologues. If Eve were here, she'd ask you, if your vagina could talk, what would it say?
Ooh, he's cute. Oh, I want to have kids. Ooh, I need some of that chocolate cake.
Please. But since I am not Eve Ensler, I ask questions such as, what comes to mind when you hear the word feminist?
Being a feminist means I support everyone in being nice to each other and not making assumptions based on gender.
Feminist without anger is like everything without everything. Excellent. Isn't that where women hate men? I want equality. I want men to get maternal leave to help with the child's development. And I want women to be paid equally. I want a woman to feel free and safe to report a rape should it happen. And I want a man to be taken seriously when he says he was raped.
Pussy power! Or, more broadly, what has been your experience as a woman?
Vaginas are weird. Sometimes I forget that I have minority status as a woman. Then I turn on the TV or magazine ads or gender marketing in our room. I have a black hole attached to my body.
Or, more specifically, what has been your experience as a woman on Bluffton's campus?
Coming to Bluffton was a great decision because even after being sexually assaulted in high school, I was still able to make friends and learn to trust men.
I'm pretty sure it's some ritual for girlfriends in college to all go out and buy vibrators together. Just as a joke, of course. Mostly. Maybe? Not really. I'm not sure campus will ever be a safe space for me. Wait, we don't have a women's center?
What have you learned as a woman?
What I wear has a direct impact on the men around me.
You put one wrong thing up there and all hell breaks loose, like those hospital horror stories. I once heard one about a girl who stuck a piece of potato up her vagina to keep from getting pregnant. You don't want to know how it ended.
So much more than my body size, or my sexuality, or my history.
What have been the topics of conversations with your friends?
The word pussy. People call one another pussies because they're weak. That insinuates that vaginas are powerless and people with vaginas are weak. But I'm powerful.
I may not have been sexually assaulted, but I still get nervous walking by myself in the dark.
We are here to share our experiences and our hearts.
All we ask is that you listen.
I am a woman.
I can't walk alone without fear. I can't wear what's comfortable.
Tampons, pads, and bras are just as expensive as they are uncomfortable.
I make less for equal work. I can't be beautiful unless I'm thin.
I have to wear makeup or I'm ugly. I can't have short hair and not be called a dyke. Big boobs are better boobs. If I sleep around, I'm a slut. And if I don't, I'm a prude.
If I'm assaulted, they question me.
Why must I be the victim? Why must being a woman mean I have to back down?
Well, I'm standing up.
In my high heels and necktie.
In my natural face and unbound tits. I'm a woman and I rule.
I will be me.
And if you don't like it,
I don't have to change for you.
Spirituality and sexuality are a beautiful combination of complex topics. Oppression of women's voices is evident in spiritual texts such as the Christian Bible. Of the total words in the Bible, women speak 14,056. That's roughly 1%. How have we treated women in the church? And how are we treating women in the church today?
hello, my name is Priska. You probably know me as Priscilla, but I'll get to that later. You might have heard a little of my story that has made it into the Bible. You have no idea how hard Aquila and I had to work to get in there, much less give credit to what all I've contributed to the church. Together with our good friend Paul, you know Paul, he wrote a good chunk of the New Testament. We are tent makers and missionaries. Aquila has never deprived me of an opportunity to use my gifts to the best of my ability. I love him dearly, but sometimes his existence unintentionally hinders my leadership in the church.
Memory, elementary school. I learned that at some churches, women cannot be leaders except to very small children. The Bible says so don't ask questions. Trust me, I go to one of those churches.
We're never seen without each other. In fact, we were childhood sweethearts. He's always been my best friend. But that's the only thing people ever say about us. You two are so cute. You're attached at the hip, just like two peas in a pod. We're known as a couple. People can't recognize us as two individuals. Sometimes I feel like the only reason I'm able to get anywhere in my ministry is because I'm married. Whenever I want to speak on my own, someone always asks when my partner comes along and does the gig with me. But when Aquila wants to speak by himself, no one bats an eye.
Memory, freshman year of high school. I realized that maybe I want to work at a church when I'm grown up, maybe even as a pastor. But I also realized that I can't do this while I attend the church that I do because they don't support women.
Then there was Luke. Paul had his thorn in his side, and Luke was mine. He thought that he was all that in a pack of pigs because he wrote the Gospel of Luke and somehow had the audience eating out of the palm of his hand. And his inflated head only got bigger when Paul asked him to record the Acts of the Apostles. Luke knew very well that I was the academic one in my marriage, and Aquila always insisted that I be listed first in our writings because I always did the most research. I told Luke over and over to recognize my leadership, but he wouldn't listen unless Aquila stepped in.
Memory, college, freshman year. I start to reflect on the sexism I've experienced over the years and how much of it has stemmed from the church. I realize that it's a miracle that I'm still involved in the church at all because of it.
And then when Luke actually did list me first in the documents, he made sure to belittle me any way that he possibly could and called me Priscilla. Priscilla is who I was when I was a little girl, confined to playing with dolls and face paints and dressed in dainty colors. My name is Priska, ancient one. Don't you dare patronize me, Luke. He never called me Priscilla in front of Aquila because he respected his fellow man, his fellow equal.
Memory, 7th grade. Before gym class, the teacher tosses around a football with the boys. When the girls join in, he kicks them aside and says, "Save it for the high school powder puff game."
But whenever we were alone, it was always Priscilla this, Priscilla that. Here's my favorite. Priscilla, darling, I'm starving. Why don't you go make some pita and hummus for your guest? Culinary duties are meant more fitted to your field of expertise. Go make some pita and hummus? Who the hell do you think you are, Luke? If kitchen duties are my expertise, why don't you go do your manly duties and go chop some lumber or shoe my camel?
Memory, 6th grade. My class draws pictures of scientists to demonstrate appropriate attire and tools for different branches of science. Most of the pictures that are drawn are of men. My teacher asks why we all do men as scientists, even though we've all seen women as scientists too. One of the boys says it's because women are weaker and get sick more often, so obviously they don't belong in the lab.
And because Paul asked him to write 2 manuscripts
and he was going to put my name in as Priscilla as much as possible to undermine my importance. Unfortunately, that's the name you all know me as. And you know, I wrote your book of Hebrews. Aquila and I were so excited for my letter to finally get published, and Paul was totally on board too, until Luke got to him. I don't know what happened, but the next day, Paul came up to me and said he thought my letter was fantastic, but he thought it might be better if the authorship was kept anonymous. Something about how it might not attract the attention of men and it was written by women, or something like that. I don't know. I was so angry that I just tuned a lot of it out.
Memory, college, junior year. I keep learning about feminism, especially in the church, and learned that a lot of mainstream youth group curriculum around dating and sex and purity are very harmful. I learned that many of the people who told me that I couldn't stand at the pulpit or that my peaking bra strap was going to get me raped clearly had never looked at the actual context of the Bible verses they were using against me. Now, I'm excited to be a feminist.
Women, this is why I am telling you this. You are equal to your male peers. My legacy was diminished by the patriarchal community of my time, and I understand that many churches in your time are still limiting you based on what you can do with your lady parts. Sisters and brothers, please recognize that you are all equal in the Lord's eyes.
President, I have found a church that welcomes my feminist ideals. I have learned a lot about myself and that I don't have to be ashamed because I was born with a vagina. I am empowered through my gender because God created me to be a woman. I am not afraid to call out injustices caused by a patriarchy that uses religion to justify crushing the minorities. I am not afraid to call myself a feminist because my faith and my God give me the privilege to stand up for the oppressed.
He told me I was beautiful. He was my first kiss, my first love, my first taste of freedom. He became the center of my world and my best friend. He told me he loved me. He was my escape from issues at home. And 3 years later, he still told me he loved me. We were inseparable. Except when he would go out drinking with the guys. Except when I left for college. But he told me he loved me. He would call me at 3 a.m. drunk. He'd say, "Bitch, I hate you."
Fuck you.
Then,
Baby, I'm sorry.
and he told me he loved me. I came home. It was better. We were fine. He was fine. When he was high, he dragged me down the hallway and tossed me into the door frames. He didn't care. He was fine. He told me he loved me. My arms were bruised. My shoulders were bruised. My heart was bruised. He was fine. He told me he loved me. It became worse. Being in love became worse. He made me cry. He told me, "You're cute when you cry." I didn't like to cry. I didn't like the bruises. I didn't like being called a bitch. But he told me he loved me. I may not have started my period until my freshman year of high school, but I did start shaving my legs by the 4th grade. That's about 9 or 10 years old. My mom says I was destined to be hairy since my background is European and Russian. And so I was born with a full head of hair anywhere that anyone would expect to find hair. Above the lips, in the nose, on my arms, on my legs, and even down there. You might be asking yourself why I was shaving at the age of 10. Well, when you're in a sport that exposes your legs, and come on, what sport doesn't? Peers at practice are bound to make subtle comments. Big legs. I was in the 4th grade. I didn't even really know my body or my emotions that well. How did this girl know it was weird or bad to have leg hair? The only reason my mom taught me to shave so early on is because she knew that I was so upset, and children can be cruel. Plus, she didn't want me trying to shave my legs without her help, only to find me in a pool of blood. The more I think about it, the more it just doesn't make sense. We are born with this hair. Why is it seen as so socially disgusting? A couple of weeks into this past October, I was so involved with schoolwork that I never really found the time to shave my legs. One day I remember looking down at my legs and thinking how long my hair was, and that I should probably shave over the weekend. But, like usual, I forgot. So it became a way to challenge myself. How long could I allow myself to go on without shaving? Could I do it long enough to the point where even I am not disgusted by it? I mean, it's Gene weather. No one would notice anyway. It is now the end of November as I write this, and I still have yet to shave. You're hearing this now in April, and who knows, I may be going 7 months strong with luscious lion legs. Or maybe I decided to shave over Christmas break, and my legs are as smooth as a baby's skin. But you know what? It's really none of your business.
Till it happens to you, you don't know how it feels. This year, 1 in 5 college women will be sexually assaulted. This is a statistic with a heart, a soul, and a story.
If you've ever been to a mandatory training session, you know they suck. This specific day of training, I knew would be hard. There was a guest speaker from Crime Victim Services to tell us the signs and symptoms of someone being sexually abused, what to do if someone would come up to you saying that he or she was raped, and how to give advice before sending the person to the counselor. The speaker began with what is classified as sexual abuse, and then went on to define rape. I remember feeling like I was paralyzed while looking up at the slideshow that would change a lot of things for me. I was reading the signs and symptoms to myself, and they resonated with me. They were describing my sexual encounters. I thought maybe I was reading wrong or being too dramatic and trying to connect my experiences to the screen, because I thought the experiences I had were normal. 2 faces of 2 men that were previously in my life appeared in my head, and I couldn't shake them. I hated them, and I hated myself for not catching it sooner. I had been raped and assaulted at least 2 times in my life, and I did not know until that moment. I honestly don't remember the rest of the seminars that day because all I wanted to do was get out. I always go to my brother for advice because he's my best friend, but I knew this time would be hard because I'd have to tell him about this secret. I called him when I got back to my dorm room. I was on the brink of tears, but I knew he'd freak out if I called crying. I told him what happened, and all he said was, "I love you, and I am so sorry. You need to talk to a therapist because what you are telling me is definitely rape." I didn't know what to do. I had finally told someone, but I was dating someone else at the time, and I loved him, and I didn't know how it would affect our relationship if I kept what I was going through away from him. I went to the counselor on campus and told her my story. She gave me a pamphlet on rape, and when I had that concrete object in my hand, I knew it was real, and I felt like something was wrong with me. I shouldn't have had to be with a counselor discussing my rapes. She told me I could press charges on one of the men that still attended school, but it would be hard because I didn't have a rape kit done when it happened, and it happened almost a year ago. I told her I wanted to deal with this by myself and not make a bigger deal of it than it had to be. She counseled me on how to tell my boyfriend. That talk was very hard because I was grasping the pamphlet the whole time, and I didn't know what he'd think of me. He took the information very well, but it changed our relationship. Our sexual experiences were now timid and fearful because he didn't want to hurt me or bring back any bad memories. The next person I told was my sister. She gave me an excellent article to read entitled "Trigger Warning, Breakfast" on the nib. It represented exactly how I was feeling because all of those times I didn't know I was being raped. Fast forward to the spring, at the end of April. I was still dealing with my issues silently and so angry with God. Why did this happen to me? Why am I still dealing with this? Why am I so hurt and you won't do anything to help me? I was so confused about things and myself, so I broke up with my boyfriend. What I was dealing with didn't need to be what he was dealing with too. One night, my friends took me out to a club to celebrate my single life, and I got too drunk. I drank with my rapist. I had conversations with my rapist. I even kissed my rapist. My friends took me away from the situation, and I just continued to have fun with them. One of my friends took me back to my room without locking my door. She still blames herself for that, but I remind her what happened next was never her fault. My door was unlocked like it was most nights, and my rapist found his way into the dorm somehow, even though the front doors to the dorm were supposed to be locked. That night, I was raped again, and after, I knew that would be the last time it would happen. The next week, my older sister sent me a text message of a link to a thought catalog blog. She had no idea about the events with my rapist the weekend before. The blog was entitled, "My rapist doesn't know he's a rapist because my culture hasn't taught him that he is one." I read the article and instantly relived every moment I had ever had in my sexually abusive relationships because this girl's story was almost exact to mine. I knew I had to tell my sister, and she encouraged me to talk to the counselor again. This time, I was taking charge and getting the justice I deserved. I had to tell my boss the entire story in full detail. That was one of the most difficult moments in my whole life. A no-contact order was issued to my rapist and told him the date for our trial at school would be sent out soon. I was finally pressing charges on my rapist, and I felt some control. I also had to tell my parents. I felt so sorry for my mom, who felt like she had no one to talk to, so she turned to her sister to help her through it. My sister also told my story to a friend so that she could talk to someone about it. I couldn't tell my dad. I'm Daddy's little girl, so my mom told him for me. My dad was so angry, and that was so sad to see. I felt like I was being a burden to my family and adding stress to their lives. The most difficult moment in my life was going through the actual trial. I felt alone. One of my friends turned against me and testified on my rapist's side and explained to them that I was too drunk to know that I wasn't really raped. I heard her words on a tape recorder, and I knew I lost my friend. Thankfully, the counselor called a recess for me, and my mom drove all the way to school just to be with me. My friend, who tucked me in the night before I was raped, had to recount the story from her perspective. She thought she could have prevented the whole thing from happening and just broke down to the jury. I felt hopeless and held her hand. My grief was being pushed onto others. Even the jury had tears in their eyes. The process was drawn out and grueling, but I found out a week later that my rapist was found guilty. My rapist could not graduate until he completed service hours in a sexual abuse class. My rapist could not set foot on campus, and it could finally be a safe space for me. The real kicker happened about 2 weeks after the semester was over. I was asked to come in to see my boss to discuss something. I was fired that day. I was left without a job because I told my story. Because my story happened to have alcohol involved and I was underage with a leadership position on campus. I was told anything I said during the trial could not get me in trouble by the university. Apparently, it could get me in trouble by my boss. I had to tell my friends and coworkers that I stepped down because my course load would be too difficult to manage with my work duties. Really, I was fired because I told my story. I am a woman who deserves to tell her story without repercussions, along with every other person. Forgiveness does not come easily, and for me, I'm still working on it. Pretty sure I'll always be working on it. One thing we all possess is power. When we feel like we have the power to control our own story, nothing compares to that. And knowing what it is like to feel powerless, I don't plan on ever relinquishing that control. What was once my secret is now my story, and it is meant to be told because it's mine.
Another dumb engagement photo. Of course I clicked through all 253 photos. I had to. Facebook put them right there in front of me, along with all the adoring comments and millions of likes. Okay, Bluffton, I get it. Ring by spring. If I hate it all, the rock, the rhyming wedding signs, the fancy invitation, the cutesy hashtag, and the secret Pinterest boards, I'm bitter and I'm jealous. If I decide to be part of it, I'm just getting my MRS degree. I'm settling. I'm too young. Yet, I'm expected to start popping out babies. After I'm married, of course. I'm dating someone and I'm happy and I'm so in love. But that doesn't mean I'm going to break my back, fitting into his life like I am the final missing puzzle piece. Maybe I'll live abroad and experience a fulfilling, service-driven life. Maybe I'll just focus on getting out of this miserable tundra we call Ohio. And I'll work out all the details later. Maybe I want 7 kids and have life bursting out of my little ranch house. And maybe I don't want kids at all, and I'll find a studio apartment somewhere and live happily ever after with my cat. I am more than just a pre-wife. I am a world traveler. I am spontaneous, yet I am predictable. I focus on myself, and I focus on myself in my relationships. If I'm in love and I'm getting married, I'm not settling. I'm choosing love, and that is way more than just being a missus. Just because I'm not engaged doesn't mean I'm bitter. It just means I'm not engaged. My relationship doesn't have to reach your standards for it to be a valid relationship. I am a full person, with or without a future life partner of mine.
Was that really sexual assault? I'm fine. I'll be alright. This question echoes through the minds of many victims of sexual assault. This denial results from believing that an experience of victimization was really not that bad. There is a conservatively estimated 68% of sexual assaults that do not get reported. Humiliation, shame, and fear equal silence. Sometimes the hardest story to believe is your own.
The counselor rattled off some 90-something percentage about how self-harmers are often victims of childhood sexual abuse. And I hesitated. I never thought about it as my story. I still don't, really. I mean, yeah, I was involved, but I never really categorized it as happening to me. I was 5. She must have been something around 8. That doesn't count. It wasn't even that big of a deal. She was 8. It was a game she wanted to play. One that her dad had taught her. I didn't realize how fucked up that was until 10 years later, at least. Her dad did this to her. It didn't really happen to me. She didn't know what she was doing when she put her hand there. She was 8. Her dad taught her. It isn't my story. It was just a sleepover. And we were in a pile of blankets on the floor. And my parents were asleep in a bed right next to us. At least I think they were asleep. It wasn't even that big of a deal. I'm pretty sure they had no idea. Otherwise, they would have said something. They would have said something. They would have noticed. How could they not have noticed? It didn't really happen to me. It isn't my story. But I guess it became my story when I brought it home, and I did the same thing to my best friend. It was a game this girl had taught me. She learned it from her dad, so it must be okay. Her dad did it with her. I did the same thing. Somehow, we're still friends. Somehow, she's forgiven me. It isn't even that big of a deal. It doesn't count. Maybe it became my my story when I told it to some idiot high school boyfriend. It wasn't even that big of a deal. Maybe it became my story when he thought it would be funny to ask if that's why I'm into girls too. Her dad did it to her. It didn't really happen to me. Maybe it became my story when I started cutting my thighs. Maybe it became my story when I got into the abusive relationship that made me start cutting my thighs. It didn't really happen to me. It isn't even my story. I don't even do that anymore. It doesn't count. That doesn't count. It isn't really even my story. But the counselor said some 90-something% of self-harmers are victims of childhood sexual abuse. And I hesitated.
Okay, can we just take a second to talk about birth and controlling it? Let's start with the basics. How come the only thing I can access for free is a condom? Why do we spend so much time talking about abortion when that whole issue could probably be prevented by making multiple choices for birth control widely accessible? But really though, where do y'all think that condom goes? And where does that baby come out of? I want to protect myself on my own terms. I don't want to just hope and pray that the condom won't break or that he'll agree to put it on. What if he refuses? What then? I'm left unprotected because I don't have access to things that keep me protected without blindly trusting him. This isn't to say there aren't other options, pills, patches, things that are surgically placed in your arm or shoved right on up there, but none of those things are free. Female condoms do exist, but how many clinics have you seen offer those as well as male condoms? Exactly. How did I stumble on all these options? By talking to my friends and doing research on my own and attending school events that talk about birth control. Because this was never something that my family would talk about. In the event we'd even get close to talking about getting married or having kids, it was all about the order of things and doing things in the right order. Not exactly a chat on, hey, just a friendly notice, if sex happens, here's how to avoid chlamydia. Abstinence teaching was in my school and home. Shout out to President Bush and actively not teaching me to protect my bush. Okay. So let's say some great consensual sex happens, and so does a pregnancy. Why does nobody tell you how weird and insane being pregnant is? Yes, life is beautiful and it's super rad that I actually get to create that with crazy body science, but why does it have to literally ruin my body? Female bodies are literally not the same after childbirth, no matter if it's a vaginal birth or a C-section, which is an actual surgery, by the way. C-section is a surgical procedure. There is a recovery period. So while you are hopped up on meds trying to mend your body after creating and expelling a tiny human, you are also hoping to get sleep for a few minutes without said tiny human screaming its little lungs out. And I thought I was tired trying to be a student in college. Have you ever seen the face of brand new parents? I never knew the combination of excitement and utter exhaustion looked like that. Why doesn't anyone tell you that stuff? I want to be protected, and I want to be protected on my own terms without needing to trust the other party to agree with me. If I decide not to have a kid, I want that to be an okay choice without people assuming there is some devastating condition keeping me from having one. If I decide to have a kid, I want to be ready, and I want to know what I'm getting into. As much as I can anyways. Here I am, no chance of having a child anytime soon, and these are the things I stay up late thinking about. Well, here's your PSA, everyone. If sex happens, there are lots of options you can take to avoid chlamydia.
When I was younger, screaming was my lullaby. The sounds of, "You stupid bitch," and "I hate you," for the chorus. I grew up in a house that I would later find out could be called domestic abuse. But I didn't know it was that different from how little girls were raised. I was never allowed to do fundraisers or be in Girl Scouts. My mom didn't bake for my birthdays or go to parent-teacher conferences. I didn't know other little girls weren't hearing smashing plates, yelling, screaming, mothers hitting door frames, others crying. Not to say I'd grown used to it or wasn't scared, I just didn't know life could exist without it. No one ever told me that life could be different. It was life as I knew it. And the closest my mother ever got to talking about it was when he was yelling at her. I couldn't take it anymore. I was about 13, and I was angry and feeling brave. Now, this is when people normally say, or stupid, or both. And though I do think it was stupid to say anything against him, I don't think it was stupid to think what he was doing was wrong. I don't think it was stupid to stood up to him. Well, he left her alone for a moment so he could focus his anger on me. And it terrified me more than anything. He had yelled in front of me before, yelled at me before, but this was different. He was in my room. No one came in my room. It was my sanctuary. It's where I could go to calm down and listen to music. The only place I felt safe. It was like I had a magic spell wrapped around my room. And the biggest demon I had ever seen just broke through it. My mother was crying, and I watched as he ran out of the house and the door slammed behind him. I went to my mom to try to comfort her, and the only thing she said to me, the only thing she ever said about anything that happened were the words, "See, you shouldn't have said anything. You made him mad." Fuck if he's mad! He was always mad! And she was angry at me because I tried to do something? She was my mother. Shouldn't she have been comforting me? It was only until a year or two ago that I realized that my mother had been beaten down into a state of submission, constantly told that she wasn't good enough, she wasn't worth it. But I can never forget what she said. I can never forget her yelling for us to go to the neighbor's house in an attempt to protect us, as a grown man threw a temper tantrum, smashing and breaking everything in sight, just for the cops to arrive and her to tell them, "Don't worry, it's just a misunderstanding. Everything's fine." I remember the way that we were always at fault whenever he was angry. I remember a lot. It was my childhood. But it seems like I can't say anything about it without anyone assuming that I hate my mother and that I can't forgive her. That's not true. I just can't forget what I've been through.
This project was designed to welcome voices from across the Bluffton community. Motherhood is a place of connection for many women, an essential piece of human life. We all have a mother, after all. The sacrifice of a mother for her children is a relinquishing of privacy and willingness for all sorts of discussions. In conclusion, call your mother.
It started when you were very small, and I worried, how would I ever let you go? How would you be safe? How could I protect you? So I thought I would just talk to you, like a person. I named your body parts, and while you learned to name your toes and fingers ears and eyes and nose. You also learned you had a vagina and your brother had a penis. It was simple enough, right? No hoo-hoos or pee-pees for my children, just vaginas and penises. Then I talked of safety and how your body belonged to you. You could say no to your grandma's hug or your cousin's tickling. In all the world where you must do what adults tell you, I gave you permission to say no. I provided you the power and understanding that was never afforded to me at your age. I listened to you. I used my poker face when you asked where babies came from. I just asked questions to better understand what you wanted to know. And when you told me about the penis games the other boys were playing, I kept my cool. I praised you for telling me about it. Then I called all the other parents. I was so proud of your smart, beautiful mind, and we learned together we could talk about anything. We suffered through the many subsequent talks about sex and sexuality. You wanted to know what AIDS was, and I'm afraid I bungled that one, as you wouldn't kiss anyone out of fear of catching something gross. I held back my laughter as you proclaimed my sensitive explanation of sexual intercourse as the most ridiculous thing you had ever heard. And I rejoiced when you recognized my private part speech as it was being delivered in preparation for a teenage overnight adventure. Imagine my chagrin when you replied that you wanted someone to touch your private parts. I said, no, not yet. Your mother is not ready for that. Now that you are long gone, established in relationships, creating families of your own, I go to work and I listen to the stories of children who are touched, sexualized, and exploited. I sit amidst their pain of neglect, mistreatment, and manipulation. I become a container for the misery in life as we shine a light into the darkness. And I wonder what would happen if we just educated our children and talked with each other.
When I got older, I must have thought I was a plant because I tried to live on only water and sunshine. I moved in with my dad before high school started because my mother's house would not have been a good place to live. I started in an area where everyone knew everyone else, but being new, I only knew my dad's coworkers. I started high school as a shy and quiet girl because of all the years my mother and her boyfriends told me that I had nothing to say. My freshman year of high school was a little rough because I had just learned to begin to accept myself for not being straight. In my high school, if you weren't straight, the only people who would talk to you were the other gay students. There were a few others who didn't care if they had gay friends, but that meant their only friends were LGBTQ. Because, you know, God forbid gay and straight people get along. But I made friends, and I got a girlfriend, and I was weird, because high schoolers are, and life was good. Until I made a new friend. Her name was Anna. She always had her way of encouraging me. Eat less, she said. If you were smaller, they might like you. She would whisper. You might know her by her full name, anorexia nervosa. But to me, she was Anna, and she was quickly becoming my best friend. You see, apparently if your mom hung out with Anna, she hangs out with you too. My mom and Anna became close after one of her boyfriends decided she was too fat and informed her of it often. It also turns out if your mother raised you to her own original song lyrics of, "You're stupid, you're fat, and can't you do anything right?" you might be looking for approval from others. Who knew? The last song my mom sang was a duet with her and whatever anger management boyfriend she had at the time. them up from anger management classes. So I starved myself and I cut a little. The white battle scars will still be seen on my legs, refusing to heal to remind me of when I was 5. I even tried puking or laxatives when I had to eat, but Anna was a much better fit for me than her friend Mia. You maybe know her as bulimia nervosa. Suddenly I had a diagnosis, anorexic bulimic tendencies. With that diagnosis came the side effects of counseling, a crying father, and a weekly doctor visit. I had hunger pains and black spots across my eyes and trouble standing, and I lost my girlfriend, and for unrelated reasons I lost my friends. I guess I was the new cool thing to hate that year. And that only made me want to starve more. Don't get me wrong, I hated that my dad cried and my ex-girlfriend couldn't handle me as broken as I was. But the thing is, all that caused me emotional distress, and when I got upset, I chose not to eat. This coping mechanism was just the never-ending cycle of hurt and starving. Starving because I was hurting, hurting others because I was starving, hurting because I hurt others, and starving because I was hurting. Cyclical reasoning at its finest. But the idea of stopping was like if you stopped breathing right now and never took another breath for the rest of your life. You'd be dead without it. Anna was my lifeline, even though she was killing me. To tell you how I managed to escape Anna would be like telling you I found my way to Bluffton. It was hard and expensive, and there was and will continue to be nights of tears. But I'm here now, and that's all that matters. I still get cold easily, but not ever to the point of shivering so violently my body is fully exhausted. If you're wondering what that's like, go run until you're about ready to collapse, and then sprint for 16 more miles while lifting an elephant above your head. I ruined my stomach. It decided, you know what we need? Pain and eating through itself. And then it proceeded to heal itself. Sometimes when I have a hard test in class or a lot of stressors happening, I think, I need to starve today. Even though I know it's wrong, that thought was so ingrained in my brain for so long that it still pops out from time to time anyway. Sometimes I do miss that little anorexic weight, and I got to being told how skinny I was. Sometimes I realize I could go back and see my anorexia in a fairy tale glass, and sometimes I want to. But I know I don't need to. I know people here like me as I am, not for the size of my jeans. And I know a few things. I don't need to change for you.
As much as I complain about my boobs and my lady junk, I really like them. They're actually pretty fucking metal if you think about it. Like, I'm not really sure I ever want to have kids, but the fact that I can grow a real live human inside of me and make food for it is pretty damn rad. Like, please stop shaming women for post-pregnancy bodies and breastfeeding in public because you can't handle the fact that she grew her own person. So, the vagina, the uterus, the works, they can all be a real downer. I'm one of those women who are pretty driven by their menstrual cycle. Not all women experience this, but I am one who does. When I'm on my period, I am all of the emotions at once. My uterus gets real fucking excited about all the blood it's losing, and I spend a good amount of my time either doubled over in pain or trying to mask the stabbing going on south of the border. Something as insignificant as finding out someone took the last damn Pop-Tart will turn me into Niagara Falls! I'm around a baby when I'm ovulating. My hormones go nuts, and I have to remind them that that whole growing your own child shit's not a comfortable experience. What's with all the blood? I mean, yeah, I know why we bleed, but why? Look, the reason those of us with vaginas leak blood on our periods is because that blood was supposed to be a nice comfy crib for a fetus. But if God wanted to give the baby something comfortable in our uterus, I don't know why God didn't give us ability to line our baby box with a blanket or something soft and cozy. It certainly makes more sense than blood if you ask me, and it's definitely more practical. Think about it. If you decide to have kids, you already have the stock of swaddling clothes for your newborn from all those months menstruating. And if you don't have kids, you fucking week. I don't care if anyone thinks that hemorrhaging from your vagina is disgusting. Just think about it for a second. It's pretty freaking metal that women can bleed for days and not die. Over an average lifetime, a woman will spend 7 years bleeding. That's 7 years of blood. Also, because our menstrual cycle follows a lunar month, I kind of feel like a majestic moon goddess or a werewolf or some shit like that. Boobs, on the other hand, not so majestic. I'm very aware that mine are big. Big boobs run in the family. In fact, genetics are the only way they can run. Otherwise, I give myself a black eye, or gravity takes me down with them, or I smack an innocent bystander in the face. Which is not as great as it might sound. My boobs can be pretty annoying. I have major back pain, cute bras are rarely in my size, they cause seatbelts to strangle me, and forget about backless clothing. But there are some upsides to being busty. I have a built-in life jacket. I like filling out clothes when I'm feeling flirty. I don't need a push-up bra, and it makes a rather handy shelf for storing items. For all y'all who are so repulsed by women stuffing things in their bra, you should be more repulsed by the clothing designers who refuse to give us decent pockets in our pants and dresses. Sometimes I'm just not going to carry a purse, and I don't have any damn pockets. So yeah, boobs, kind of helpful 30% of the time, and hella annoying another 70. Anyone thinks that women are gross, well, maybe really they're just jealous that we have the ability to fucking grow humans and still be alive after bleeding for 7 years. That's fucking metal. So, even though there are times when being a woman is a little gross, it can also be totally badass.
These are our voices. This is our truth.
I am a woman who deserves to tell her story without repercussions.
But he told me he loved me.
Eat less. If you were smaller, they might like you
don't
more.
have to change for you.
Why doesn't anyone tell you that?
I am more than just a
That
green
was my
light.
childhood. I couldn't take it
No
anymore.
hoo-hoos or pee-pees, just vaginas and
In
penises.
conclusion, call your
I
mother.
want more than just a free condom.
My lullaby. You stupid bitch. I hate you.
It's really none of your business.
All we ask is that you
I'm a
listen.
woman who deserves
But he
to
told
tell
me
her
he
story
loved me.
without
I
repercussions.
don't have to change.
Why doesn't anyone tell
I
you
am
that
more
stuff?
than just a
My
green
lullaby.
light.
When we feel like we have the power to control our own story, nothing compares to that.
This is my story.